Welcome to IMC Live, the interactive webinar series hosted by the Industrial Marketing Collective. We're here to help you make connections, learn, get results for your business, maybe even make a friend or two. We love that. I'm Alan Finewald, a senior writer here at the Industrial Marketing Agency Live hosts, along with the wonderful Peyton and Aaron. Today, we're talking trade shows. Now, a lot of us have heard about the big manufacturing trade shows like the International Manufacturing Technology Show or FabTech. And those big shows can provide a lot of opportunities. But for many of us, a smaller mid-sized trade show could offer higher quality opportunities if you do it right. And as we know, when it comes to high quality leads, sometimes you can do a lot with a little. So to help us understand the magic of the mid-sized trade show, we're happy to be joined by Andrew Legrand, the industrial marketer at the Missouri Association of Manufacturers, aka MAM. Andrew, would you please introduce yourself to the group?
Yeah, absolutely. Like Alan said, my name's Andrew Legrand, Director of Marketing and Relationships here at MAM. Been with the organization about 3.5 years now. We're a 31-year-old organization that's kind of gone through a rebranding in the past 4 years or so. We're focused on bringing true value to the manufacturers of Missouri, whatever that looks like. So legislative advocacy, any sort of member benefits like health insurance or 401k programs. And then, of course, events and activities, which is kind of probably why they Gorilla 76 tapped me on the shoulder for this one, as we just recently, within the past couple of years, have launched our regional trade show, the Midwest Manufacturers Trade Show and Conference. So that is one of our annual shows that we host.
And we've all had such a good time when we get to go. So
absolutely, we've had the pleasure of having a lot of the Gorilla 76 team attend and present at the trade show. So huge fans of G76 and what they're doing.
We appreciate that. And you might be a little familiar to some people because you're also an attendee here fairly often. So, great to have you in the official capacity of a special guest.
Absolutely. It's a little different being on this side of the call, but I'm excited and honored to be here. So,
all right, good deal. We're honored to have you. So I guess let's go ahead and dive on in. So could you just kind of tell us how you all got the idea of starting a trade show at this time and what that process was like for you?
Yeah, it's kind of interesting. So like I said, when I joined about 3.5 years ago, we really sat down and analyzed the landscape of manufacturing in the state of Missouri. And at the time, there was, I believe, 6,700 manufacturers in the state of Missouri. Within the last 3 years, that's jumped up to about 8,300 manufacturers. But this statistic always surprises people. About 80% of those manufacturers employ 50 employees or less. So those are mom and pop shops, the smaller, truly smaller manufacturers that are making a big impact. But they don't get out that much. They don't have time to invest a lot of time or money at the larger trade shows. And we didn't really know that 3.5 years ago, but we started getting out and touring manufacturing facilities, and we've been in over 270 facilities in the past 3.5 years. And one common thing that we've seen is everybody is busy, busy, busy. And they just don't make the time in their schedule to, send employees to these industry events. A lot of them aren't going to Las Vegas or Chicago or Orlando for the big ones. So that kind of got us thinking about, well, how can we provide connection opportunities for these smaller manufacturers? And we started with what we called our manufacturers regional roundtables, just bringing together 20 or 30 manufacturers in a given area, just for 2 hours over lunch, bring in some free barbecue, and that gets a lot of people to show up. And typically we just start with a couple questions and then the conversation takes off from there. So that's when we truly realized people really want to connect. It's not that they don't want to, they're just, simply too busy right now is the common theme. So after we held a couple of those regional roundtables around the state, we put together our first mid-sized trade show in 2022. We had about 80 exhibitors and about 400 attendees at that show. And it's just grown since then. This past one in February, I believe we had 136 exhibitors and right around 850 attendees. So.
Yeah, that's awesome. What gap do you think this like mid-sized trade show is filling for these manufacturers?
Yeah, so kind of touched on it. They just don't have the staff to send to the big trade shows. Everybody's busy, especially during the COVID years. Where some industries kind of lagged, manufacturing just boomed. I'm not sure if anybody on the call can relate to that, but what we heard was 21, 22, and maybe even 23 were record years for a lot of our Missouri manufacturers. So couple that with some of the workforce challenges that we're seeing and the shortage, they just simply don't have the staff or maybe the financial resources coming out of 2024 to send employees to those big shows. So what we're trying to do here is take what we see as successful from those big shows and copy it on a smaller scale to where there's less time investment and less financial investment. And then on top of that, at these bigger trade shows, you might give your 2-minute elevator pitch and hear someone else's 2-minute elevator pitch, quickly decide if it makes sense to spend any more time. And if it doesn't, you're on to the next one. At these smaller shows, it's a really targeted audience, and it allows for people to have in-depth conversations and build lasting relationships that go beyond the trade show. Even if you don't do business with each other, it's just good to have those resources and connections in your network. So that's really where we're trying to fill that gap between the big and not even going at all. Another one that we try and do is, I haven't been to any of the big shows in the past year or so, but what we understand is a lot of those shows get a lot of speaker requests, or they send in, hey, I want to speak. We do it a little different, where we take what we're seeing on our plant tours and what we're seeing in the headlines, and try and figure out what are those topics that manufacturers really are interested in, identify those, and then go out to subject matter experts, let them know this isn't a sales pitch. It's not, for your company. Bring resources, bring value, bring information to those sessions, and good things will happen. So that's kind of the gap that we're trying to fill.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you get more networking, more time to relationship build. That's probably a little bit more affordable for a smaller team. How else would the experience be different from going to one of the large trade shows?
Yeah. So, if you go to a mid-sized trade show, obviously there's not going to be as many exhibitors. So that's a really good opportunity to stand out for your company if you do decide to exhibit. We actually have come up with a quick one-sheet flyer that we send to all of our exhibitors. And it's just how to make the most of your trade show time as an exhibitor. A lot of the points on that document are pretty self-explanatory and should be common sense, but it's good to share with the whole team that's going to be coming to the show, so everybody's on the same page, and a good reminder of make sure your booth is open and inviting people in, not putting the table in front and cutting people off, just things like that. So it's a good opportunity to promote your business. One thing that I always say is get creative with your trade show exhibit. First and foremost, keep it clean with the marketing message. Obviously, you want your logo there, but don't make it just a big logo that doesn't tell what you guys make or what you do. Use simple language, make sure that people can see it from far away and it's attention grabbing, but then take it another step further and make it an interactive exhibit booth. One that I saw a couple years ago online, it was, I believe, it was a water purification company that either provides the services or manufactures the equipment. And of course, who wants to sit and learn about water purification systems? What they did was really cool. They got a big booth and had just a stick with two 5-gallon buckets of water on each end, and asked their attendees, pick this up, walk back and forth a couple times in our booth, and tell us what you think. And, you know, after 3 or 4 times, that's really difficult to do. Well, they said, you know, a lot of these communities that we're serving, they have to do that daily for their clean water. So we're trying to eliminate that that challenge and that obstacle, which I thought was a really cool way to get remembered, stand out in a sea of other exhibitors, and really make an impact on the people that come to your booth. So get creative, have fun with it. It doesn't necessarily have to be exactly the problem that your service or product is a solution to. Get creative, make an analogy, and that will kind of get you remembered more, I guess.
Yeah, like that booth is doing a lot of work. They have a narrative that you can latch onto and feel something about. It relates directly to the benefit, the problem that their solution is solving. And it creates like a labor bias, whereas like, oh, I like actually did some work at that booth. I'm gonna remember that booth as compared to the 50 others I strolled by today.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Anything to stand out, make the most of your booth, for sure.
Yeah, that's so creative. I'm curious, what is the advantage of the mid-sized trade show from like a budgetary perspective?
It's kind of getting into the ROI question, you know, why should we do the mid-sized trade show? I'll start with, if you've never been to a mid-sized trade show, you don't have to jump all in with a booth. Send a couple folks to attend and see if it even makes sense. Take notes of the other companies that are there, who are the attendees, even what are the topics and the speakers presenting on. That will show you if it makes sense to exhibit. First and foremost, from a budgetary standpoint, it's less expensive. The reason why we hold ours in Branson rather than in St. Louis or Kansas City is because, again, we know that those smaller manufacturers don't have those resources. So we try to find a big enough space that's also not going to be budget breaking for those companies. If we were to hold it in St. Louis or Kansas City, it'd be 3 or 4 times as much. So we try and always think about that. But really, there's so many opportunities, from connecting with exhibitors, connecting with other attendees, connecting with the speakers, that there's definitely some sort of ROI. It may not be specific leads or business that comes from it, but it's the relationships. We're really focused on the relationships. If you can't necessarily work with this company, chances are they're going to have another network that, when they hear about a problem, hey, we need to connect you with XYZ business that can help you out. And that's, you know, brought back to the trade show, who you met at the trade show. You can also, you know, what I'll say about the advantage of the mid-sized trade show compared to a bigger show is you can send more people because it's a lower cost. So I always encourage companies to send someone from marketing, HR, operations. Try and get leadership there if you can. That way, everybody's looking at it through their perspective and their role in the company. Just because, you know, a lot of us are in marketing here, you go to a trade show and you may see value, or you may not see as much. Your operations leader might say, oh, heck yeah, we've got to attend and got to exhibit at this show every year. Well, there's your buy-in and your support to get the budget for it next year.
Yeah, I'd say especially if you had a booth, there's some other thing that required a lot of labor. You want to have some people there that have that free time to actually network in a social way and not just be running to the next thing and the next thing and wearing themselves out.
Absolutely. At our show, we provide two booth representatives, which I think is pretty standard for most trade shows. But we encourage exhibitors to bring a couple additional folks so they can attend, walk the trade show floor, attend all the breakout sessions, because that's where the real magic happens. If you can get away from your booth and go to a breakout session, spark up a conversation with the person next to you. It's not, it's much less intimidating than having them try and come into your booth and get the sales pitch or whatever the case may be. There's a lot of really strong connections that you can make at the presentations, and it shows you, well, what are my customers really focused on right now? You can see the entire agenda, and you might think, oh, maybe this one at 9:30 is really going to be full, but it's not as full as you thought. And the other one at 9:30 is standing room only. So that can kind of direct you on where you need to, market and push your strategy.
I also think like with ROI, I used to see this a lot, is like sometimes you would meet someone at a show in 2021 and you see them every year, and maybe the business doesn't actually come until 2023 when they're ready for a project, but you started fostering that connection at that, more intimate, mid-sized show. Is that, I don't know, does that match up with what you see too?
It's definitely case by case and company by company. We've had probably 15 or 20 companies that have been with us from the start. And a lot of them have the mindset, exactly like you were saying, Aaron. I'm not going to see results in the first 3 years. I'm, playing the long game of 5, 7, 10 years down the road. If I'm constantly here connecting with those individuals, for example, one of them is in the pallet industry. So, not necessarily going to be selling them up front on, hey, we got better pallets. But you create that relationship and that trust. And then 3, 4, or 5 years down the road, when they have a challenge with their supplier, well, they know who to call and who to reach out to. Not saying that has to be your strategy going into it or your focus. It's important to have a clear objective and expectations from the show. Whether that's, hey, we just want to get out, we want to make X number of connections, or hey, we're really looking to get 5, 10 quality leads. Whatever the case is, make sure that everybody's on the same page. And then after the show, go back to that, see if it was successful, and then make your decision based upon that.
I think that nugget is incredibly important, Andrew, because like what you just said was, what is your goal before you go to the show? Like how are you going to measure success? What are you trying to do while you're there? And then did you do it? So like, I think a lot of times folks are just like, oh, let's just go walk the show. But if you think, what are we trying to get out of it? It's almost like that manifestation. You're more likely to get to that point if you know what you're targeting.
Absolutely. Create a lot of these shows, they put their exhibitor list on the website. Make a hit list of who you want to connect with, based upon what you see. And then I always tell people, pick like 2 or 3 companies that just seem really cool, really interesting, and connect with them. Even if you know that there's no business opportunity, it keeps things fun. It keeps you interested in the show. And then again, you never know what's going to come from a new connection. So have a plan going in, and then create some fun with it and add some off the wall companies to go connect with.
Get some swag while you're at it.
Plenty of swag to go around.
Yeah. We had a question from the chat. How do you feel about paying to be a speaker at one of these events?
We've never done it at ours. And we've actually had that question come up more this year than any other past year. Again, our philosophy is we're going to focus on getting the right people to present education and resources, not necessarily a sales pitch. I know that those big shows, that's a great way to get exposed. And if you have the the means in your budget, I don't think that it's a bad opportunity. But again, if it's your first time going, or if you're kind of unsure, I wouldn't jump all in with that, because you just don't know who that audience is. So attend or exhibit before you pay to be a presenter, because it could pan out really great. Or a lot of people might not be in your target audience, and then you might be disappointed with the results of that.
Mm-hmm. You got to give yourself time to build a little credibility with the audience too.
Absolutely. Yeah.
I will say those speaking engagements though, even if you are like paying to do it, but you approach it with like the educational mindset, if it's resonating with your audience, that is like the best way to get conversations and connections started, because people will come up to you right after, and then like the whole rest of the show, they'll come up to you the next day because they remember it and they want to ask you questions. So if you have that right fit with the topic, it could be worth paying for. It's usually the bigger shows that it's like paid opportunities though.
And
Yeah.
I would,
I'm glad you brought that up, Aaron.
I was gonna
Always come
oh,
from
sorry, Andrew, go ahead.
sorry, Faden. Always come from it from an educational point. Nobody wants to get sold to. Educate, provide resources, provide information. They're going to see you as the expert. And if they have more questions, they will absolutely come up to you afterwards, and you'll have that one-on-one conversation. We even had to extend time in between our sessions because we were having so many conversations after that. So based off our experience, the education perspective and approach really resonates with people. Sorry, Peyton.
No, I mean, I was gonna say the same thing. I think it's like unanimous agreement here of just like education is key. And I think if you are interested in paying for a speaking slot, like, cause you want, like, you just already know, like, this is our audience. We would love to have that platform and that opportunity to have folks, like what Aaron said, just come up to you afterwards. Like, you already know, say you walked the show last year, this is it. I mean, it's like a courting process almost with like the Andrews of the world, right? Where you're like, hey, I really think we would be a good fit, but you have to kind of like present your case to the leaders of that conference. Like, what are you trying to teach this market? Why is it the right fit? And then I think you're more likely to secure that speaking slot. And in these mid-sized shows where maybe they aren't paying speakers, or they're not requiring you to pay for the slot, maybe it's just you've built the relationship and you've made your case enough where you get the platform without having to pay for it, even because it's a symbiotic relationship.
Absolutely. Speaking from that point, we always focus on long-term relationships when it comes to our speakers. We vet to make sure that they're not going to turn it into an infomercial, just because that's not what we want at our show. Every show is different. But absolutely, if you can connect with the coordinators of the show, the sessions, whoever it is, make that relationship and build upon it year and year and year. There's more of a chance that they'll put you more in the limelight, give you more opportunity to speak because you're credible, because you are seen as a subject matter expert. You have really great reviews on your speaking presentation based off of the survey that they send out to attendees. Go for the relationship, not just the we've got this opportunity one time, let's make the most of it. That's why we bring Gorilla 76 back so often to speak. Everybody raves about them, loves that they present from the education perspective, and they just know their stuff. So
I'm just not a very good salesman.
Well, that's what you want. So Andrew, I know you already talked about some tips for a great booth, like making it engaging, making it an experience. Are there any tips kind of more specific to the mid-sized trade show versus, you know, if you're planning a giant booth for making that smaller space really impactful?
Yeah. Alan and I were kind of talking about this. Just in years past, it's funny how many companies have like the booth set up, and well, it's what we do every year, so they just set it up. A lot of them, you have to really look at their entire setup to figure out what they do. And sometimes you can't even figure out what product they're trying to sell or what service they provide. So make it completely obvious. Use, clear, concise wording. If you build hammers and sell hammers, put that on a banner somewhere, because people might not notice it just from your company name. Make it so easy and so obvious that people know what you do. Make sure those banners can be read. Don't get all crazy and flashy with it, because sometimes that can take away from the message. Sometimes the coolest booth isn't necessarily the most effective booth. So make sure that you're kind of thinking about things like that. And then again, just put yourself in the customer's shoes. Bring it back to them. What problems are they experiencing, and how can you help them solve those problems? Those are the biggest things that I think build a great booth and can bring the most value from a show.
Yeah, yeah. Like I remember walking around a show a couple years ago, and I was trying to steal good slogans, great artists borrow and steal, I guess. And I was looking around for some inspiration, and I thought there's 3 slogans on banners here that I think are really cool, and I have no idea what any of them do, which is probably a problem. And I think that's especially an issue for software companies, or people that can just like, here's the product, it's on the table. Where you got to make it like, if I don't know what you sell, I don't want to come up and talk to you about how'd you come up with that slogan? It's so clever.
Exactly. And don't start with the elevator pitch. Just try and get to know those people on a personal level. We're kind of fortunate here in the Midwest because a lot of people are friendly and they're open to building relationships. So what we've seen is, just ask them how they're doing, what they're excited for in the show, and then naturally go into what you guys do and what you provide.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so we had a question in the chat here from Aya. Would you like to come on and ask your question?
Oh, I was muted, sorry. So there are some trade shows, usually relatively large ones, we always dread, meaning that we have to go to this show and exhibit just because our competitors are there. We don't get a lot of leads, we see the same people, and most people that, not most, but a lot of people that come to our booth are trying to sell something to us. So my question is, if you have to go to those shows anyway, what can we do to get the most out of it?
That's a really good question, Aya. Thanks. I would say if you know that you're going in against your competitors, you have that information from past that really don't get the leads. Maybe focus on what conference sessions are going on, and educating yourself about what's going on in the industry, just so you can make that marketing message stronger and more relevant. If you're not too worried about being at the booth, maybe you start walking the show and only have one person in the booth. That way you can maximize your opportunities to connect with other people outside of your booth, and maybe something will come from that. It's kind of hard to, if you're forced to go because of your competitors. I totally get that, because we have a lot of overlap at our trade show. But it's always good to be seen and be out there. So definitely make the most of it. Maybe not focus so much on the selling side of things and focusing on the exhibit. Focus on the conference, or focus on creating those relationships outside of the trade show floor.
Focusing on or paying attention to the outside, the happenings of the show or exhibit is also good. That's a good idea. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Maybe mix it up and challenge your competitors to a rap battle.
I like the
Um,
way
Glad
you
to
think,
hear
Ellen.
anyway.
Tyler also posted a response in the chat that I wanted to get in the recording. Consider like co-hosting or hosting a happy hour with like your customers or your partners if they're also at the show. That's a great way to kind of like get some more out of the show while you're all like in the same place and kind of shake things up a little.
I love that idea. We did our first happy hour last year, and it was a huge hit. We did it right before the show started, the night before, and that just kind of brought down all the barriers and got everybody comfortable before the show even started. So it was a beautiful lead in.
Who doesn't love a happy hour? Yeah. Oh, we got one more in the chat real quick. But how do you feel about take-home materials? What's the key to success there?
Yes, yes, and yes. It's so important. Make sure it's what we've seen is a lot of the operations managers or leaders that we've seen on our tours. A lot of them have a board where they put all of that take-home material, or they have a file somewhere. They don't just take it and grab some swag with it and then throw it in the trash. These people are really looking for information, but you got to keep it very short and concise. One page. Again, educate, 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 not necessarily selling a product or a service. Absolutely have take homes, maybe even some rack cards, not full sheets. Make it to where they can pin it up on a board and easily find it or see it every day, and reference it, and that'll make it worth bringing that printed material. It's better than just bringing a product sheet and hoping that they'll not grab everybody else's product sheet at the show, only yours. Stand out a little bit.
Yeah. We had another question in the chat from Jeremy. Is a good inbound strategy any kind of substitute for going to a trade show as far as lead gen goes?
That's an interesting question. I can't really speak to that. I will say that what we've found is people, with COVID, everybody went virtual, and then everybody got super busy, and really didn't connect in person all that often. People are very they're desiring that in-person connection, and they want to meet people in person. Manufacturers like to shake people's hands. They like to know who they're doing business with, where they're getting their information from, and build that trust. So I say I don't know if it's necessarily a complete swap or a substitute. I think that there's an argument for both. Even if you don't exhibit at a trade show, it's still great to get out and meet people in person.
Yeah, I would think of it like a shovel and a hoe. Like you can do similar things with those two things, but one of them's a lot better at some things than others. And with trade shows, you're not going to probably get a lead from across the country, perhaps. But we were talking about earlier how we're almost missing a fraternal-ish network of manufacturers that are willing to work together and help each other out, where you're not going to get that from doing an inbound campaign.
It all goes back to Peyton's point of what do you want out of the show? Identify that, see if you get it from the show, and then you can make your decision on was it worth it, or do we just focus on the inbound side? So.
Okay. So we're quickly approaching the end of our time here. So want to make sure that we take a little nod to the future. But what do you see as new in the world of trade shows? What is coming to the mid-sized trade show that people might not expect?
A lot of the mid-sized shows are now seeing the same technologies at the bigger shows. As those technologies become more affordable, and shorter lead times, there's a lot of crossover. Of course, you're not going to get the cutting edge, hey, this just came out this year, that you'll see at IMTS. but you might be surprised if you haven't gone to a mid-sized trade show in the past couple years. There's a lot of automation and robotics, of course, a lot of innovations that are on display at those mid-sized trade shows. And it's a great opportunity to interact and engage and see if that is something that makes sense for your company without having to spend the time and money at a big show. I think that there's going to be even more and more crossover as the years go on. So don't sell it short of what you might see at a mid-sized trade show.
Mm-hmm. One quick question from the chat here we got, but do you have any tips or tricks for connecting your booth with your digital presence and, help track and metric your performance?
Ooh, interesting question. I like that. I might have to think about that. Of course, I always go to make it an experience, and then maybe keep some of that information private, or don't share it with them and say, go to our website to learn more. I'm not sure exactly if I've seen anything that connects it that well. We have seen more and more. I kind of want to gauge the audience, just from an attendee perspective. How do you guys feel about QR codes?
That's what I was going to say, Andrew. And I'd be interested to hear what the whole group has to think about that. But yeah, QR code.
Yeah.
Because you can embed those tracking UTMs in there and see a little bit more where the source is coming from. But
yeah, that's a very
fave.
inexpensive way of tying it. And we've seen it more and more. There was kind of a lull of where there was QR codes everywhere, and then they kind of went away, but it seems like they're coming back. If you guys are fine with it, it is a very inexpensive way of trying to tie it back, and it's not a huge piece of real estate to have at your booth.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and then of course you could always just raffle a Yeti cooler, and you have to give your email for that.
A lot of people, and maybe if you're going to do a giveaway, get unique with that too. We have seen a lot of Yetis, which everybody loves, but if we keep giving away, everybody's going to have one, and then nobody's going to want the giveaway. So get creative with your giveaways. I think one of at our previous show, they did a kind of a tailgate package of a small grill and utensils and things like that. So have fun with it. And of course, that was just after football season, so it was kind of relevant. Should have been before football season, but have fun with it. Shake it up.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that'll get you some memories too.
Yeah, the thing about QR codes, and this is kind of coming up in the chat a little bit about like what I wouldn't force people to scan it right then and there necessarily, but if you do have take homes, like kind of tying it back to another thing, putting it on a banner is great, but then that banner's permanent and it's evergreen. And so now, like, I guess you could redirect it or something, but like your QR code's there, and if you're going to use it from year to year, I don't know, but like on a little business card or a postcard of some kind, putting the QR code where folks can take it. They don't have to scan it in the moment, but they could scan it later, still seeing a little bit of that source traffic.
Yeah, to that point, I hate it when I feel like I'm being pressured to scan a QR code, or like, oh, hey, thanks for dropping by. Here, get your phone out, please. Like, I'm trying to just like be two people real quick first. I don't know if I really want to be in your system yet. So all in time.
Yeah.
Well, we are quickly approaching our final minute. If there is nothing else, Andrew, you've been a pleasure to speak with. I think that everyone got a lot of great information here, judging by people's facial expressions and everything. So thank you so much for all your wisdom.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Really appreciated it.
All right. Well, until next time, everyone, thanks you for being here. We're going to see you all in a couple weeks, right?
Yep. December 5th, we will have Brittany McCall and Carla Gregory to talk about making an impact with marketing at a global company. And they're also speaking at the Industrial Marketing Summit. Different topic, but you'll get kind of a preview of them as speakers. So We'll see you then.
Bye, everybody. Happy Thanksgiving.
Happy holiday.